Good morning, it's Mike again. My project for today is the Stone Arch Bridge. I mocked this up out of inch and a half foam, and the foam is actually a structural member. You can see the risers under the track bed there at the other end. And at this end. In the middle, I didn't want to have to get tangled up in risers while I was building the bridge. So I made the foam pieces behind the arch plate are actually structural members for the roadbed. Now I originally wanted to cover this in the Scenic Express Pennsy stone walls and carve the arch out. But it doesn't look like that's going to be viable. My first problem is the inch and a half wall is just way too thick. So I'm going to have to take this apart and cut that front plate down at least to about 3/4 of an inch, which would be a 3-foot wall. Now I've decided against covering it with the Pennsy stone wall sections. And I'm going to actually try to carve these rocks into the front facing. And then what I'm going to do is butt these against and make a round section to cap these off and join them together. Now I cut my teeth on stone wall carving yesterday. I carved this little retaining wall that comes down from the town and supports the roadbed in an area where the rock isn't very stable. My first undertaking here was to get this front plate detached from the rest of the bridge structure. Now, I use Gorilla Glue to attach all my foam together, and that has a couple advantages. It dries very quickly, and it also is pretty easy to get apart. In this case, I went behind with a razor saw and an X-Acto and got this front plate separated from the rest of the structure. I've gotten the excess glue off of the front plate, got it separated, and now I'm going to take this up to my shop and cut it on the table saw down to about a 1/2 inch. Okay, I've removed the front plate, and as you can see I had some tear out as I was removing. I couldn't get the glue off cleanly, so I took that up, cut it down to 3/4 of an inch on the table saw. Ended up with this piece here. Now from there I sanded this down. I had to use the back side so I'd match up with the tear-offs there on the other plate. So I sanded it down, block sanded with 60 grit to rough it out, and then 150 to smooth it up a little bit. Now I've gone along. I took a piece of the side, or the rock wall that I'm going to match it up against, and set it beside it and laid out my lines. Now the bricks on the sheet did not line up in even lines, so I straightened them out a little bit, just made sure I kept the same spacing on the blocks so they'll match up later. Once I got down, I marked 3 of those rows and then went around and cut my circles for the arch blocks on the piece. Now I've scribed all these in with a pencil. You'll see there's some tear out and other stuff, but this is a rough block wall, so that tear out will be actually pretty good for what I'm looking for. Okay, as you can see here, I've gotten all my horizontal lines scribed. Now I did these with a pencil, not with a knife. I marked my points Went in, ran the pencil against the straight edge, and I indented about 1/8, 3/16 to get a good carve. You'll see a lot of break out there, but that's the way the stones are on the Scenic Express. Over here at the end, you can see I've matched up the rows with the Scenic Express. All my horizontal lines now, it's down to the really tedious part of cutting the verticals, which have to be done individually. Okay, I'm about 7 hours in. Took about 3 hours to carve all these horizontal rocks. Alright, we're here the next morning. I've just completed digging out these channels on the bricks. I don't know how close this will focus in. You can see it's a mess. I went through with the scraper. I used an X-Acto knife. Don't use anything you don't feel safe with. And I scraped down at a 90-degree angle sideways and scraped through all the grooves, widening out and roughing up the bricks even more. Okay, I wanted to cover how I did these arches. Now for the stones around the archway itself, I put a screw in at the base of the arch, put my tape measure on it. I just dotted equal points around the edge there for my rocks, and then went up and scribed the lines as they went around the radius. Now, when I got where I thought I was done, I realized I wasn't really done. When I looked at the piece from Scenic Express, there are no level stones in it. And mine has quite a few level stones in it. So I had to go back, and I'm working now on roughing these stones up and trying to get the level spots out of it. Right here you can see a spot where I've done some of the roughing out. And I think I'm pretty much at the end of what I can do here, because when I finish this, I think it's getting worse now instead of better. Okay, when things go wrong, plan B. This is plan B. I've sanded out a whole bunch of that roughness. I just didn't like it. I've got the stones around the archways all cut out and the grooves on the sides. Now I figured since I couldn't bring the mountain to Muhammad, I'd bring Muhammad to the mountain. The reason I couldn't achieve that look from these Pennsy stone walls is all these blocks are rough faced. So I went in and scuff sanded it. Now these blocks look like mine. Next step, painting. Okay, now I've got a coat of primer on the arches. And I've got to refit them to where I cut them off of the base plate for the bridge early on. I'm going to cut these all and finish them off. Do any rock work I need to do by hand. Okay, here's where we stand right now. I've trimmed off the excess foam on the fronts here where I took the piece off of to carve. I'll have to hand scribe in some rocks on those. I've roughed out a half round piece that I'm going to use as the end points or connecting points that you see on some of these bridges. I still have to do some more research to see exactly what they look like. Now on the piece from Scenic Express that I scuff sanded down, I may have to clean up a few of these grout joints. You can see down the bottom where the grout joints aren't defined very well. But overall so far I'm very happy with the rock work.